The dark real history behind Shakespeare, including the question nobody wants to answer. April 23rd is the day the world celebrates the birth and death of William Shakespeare. Except we don't actually know his birthday. We invented it. We needed a story to be neater than it was. And that, right there, is the most Shakespearean thing about Shakespeare. The man who wrote more profoundly about appearance versus reality than any writer in history is himself almost entirely appearance. Strip back the monument and you find almost nothing. No letters, no manuscripts, 7 years of his life simply missing, a will that left his wife a bed, and a death that may have been the world's most consequential drinking accident. This is the real history behind the legend. The man, William Shakespeare, was born in Stratford upon Avon, probably in April 1564, probably on the 23rd, though, as we've established, that date is a polite convention rather than a fact. His father was a glove maker who also served as town bailiff. His mother came from a minor landowning family. He attended local grammar school, married at 18, and had 3 children by the time he was 21. Then the record goes almost completely dark. Scholars refer to the years between 1585 and 1592 as Shakespeare's lost years. After the birth of his twins, Shakespeare left few historical traces until he is mentioned as part of the London theatre scene in 1592. 7 years. Where was he? What was he doing? How did a glovemaker's son from a Midlands market town become, in that gap, the greatest playwright who ever lived? Biographers have reported many apocryphal stories. One Stratford legend holds that Shakespeare fled the town to escape prosecution for deer poaching. Another has him starting his theatrical career minding the horses of theatre patrons in London. John Aubrey reported he had been a country schoolmaster. Some scholars suggest he may have been employed by a Catholic landowner in Lancashire, a man who named a certain William Shakeshafter in his will. We don't know. We genuinely do not know, and that is extraordinary. The question. In 1848, more than 2 centuries after Shakespeare's death, someone first asked in print, did he actually write the plays? It sounds outrageous. It is, by the consensus of virtually every professional Shakespeare scholar, almost certainly wrong. And yet, it has never entirely gone away, because the circumstantial case that something is odd is, at minimum, interesting. Consider, no document attests that he received an education beyond grammar school or owned any books. No personal letters or literary manuscripts, certainly written by Shakespeare of Stratford, survive. Consider, in an age of copious eulogies, the reaction to Shakespeare's death in 1616 was eerie silence. Compare the flood of grief for his fellow actor Richard Burbage, said to eclipse the mourning for Queen Anne when they died in the same year. We're supposed to believe the same man was the soul of the age. And nobody wrote a word when he died? Consider, the plays contain extraordinarily detailed knowledge of law, medicine, falconry, court life, continental Europe, classical literature. More than 80 authorship candidates have been proposed. The most popular are Sir Francis Bacon, Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, Christopher Marlowe, and William Stanley, Earl of Derby. Prominent skeptics include Mark Twain, who wrote, "So far as anybody actually knows and can prove, Shakespeare of Stratford on Avon never wrote a play in his life." Walt Whitman agreed, Helen Keller agreed, Sigmund Freud agreed. Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens said, "I think the evidence that he was not the author is beyond a reasonable doubt." Now, the counter-argument is powerful, and the mainstream scholarly position is clear. For over 200 years after Shakespeare's death, nobody questioned that the man from Stratford wrote the plays. The controversy emerged in the Victorian period, when people couldn't square his humble origins with a romantic notion of genius. The documentary evidence, title pages, contemporary references, the first folio compiled by his colleagues 7 years after his death, all points to Shakespeare of Stratford. As one distinguished scholar puts it, the inventors of modern English literature were overwhelmingly from the working class. Those who can't believe a man with a grammar school education wrote these plays overlook a sobering fact of literary history. The debate is probably unsolvable and probably beside the point, but it tells us something fascinating about our need for genius to come with a biography that matches. We want the greatest writer in history to have a life as extraordinary as his work. The glovemaker's son from Stratford doesn't quite do it for us, and so we reach for someone grander. Shakespeare himself would have found this hilarious. He understood snobbery better than anyone. The lost years. Even if we accept Shakespeare as the author, and most scholars do, firmly, the lost years remain genuinely mysterious. One of the more intriguing theories involves religion. In 1757, workers renovating the Shakespeare family home made a significant discovery: a Catholic spiritual testament hidden in the rafters. It was signed by John Shakespeare, William's father. Though the document has since been lost, transcriptions survive. Shakespeare's mother came from a family with known Catholic sympathies. His daughter Susanna was later cited for failing to receive Anglican communion. The pattern is suggestive. England in 1585 was a dangerous place to be Catholic. Priests were being executed. Recusants were fined and persecuted. If the Shakespeare family had Catholic sympathies, and there's circumstantial evidence they did, then the 7 missing years might represent a period of deliberate self-concealment, not deer poaching, something considerably more serious. We don't know. That's the honest answer. We never will. What we do know is that when Shakespeare reappeared in 1592, he was already established enough to be mocked by a rival playwright as an upstart crow who presumed to write as well as university men. He had arrived. The years before that rival are simply gone. The son he lost. Here is the thing about Shakespeare that gets lost in all the authorship debates and birthday controversies. He had a son named Hamnet, a twin, born in 1585. In the summer of 1596, Shakespeare's only son died at just 11 years old. It is unclear whether Shakespeare was even home to attend the boy's funeral. He was in London, writing plays, building the Globe Theatre. 4 years later he wrote Hamlet, a play about a father's ghost and a son's grief, about the unbearable weight of a world that has lost something it cannot name. The name Hamnet and the name Hamlet are variants of the same name. Whether that's coincidence or confession is something Shakespeare never said. This is what gets me about Shakespeare. The plays are full of fathers and sons, full of loss and guilt and time running out, and the man who wrote them left almost no record of how he felt about anything. The plays are everything. The man is almost nothing. The death, in March 1616, Shakespeare revised his will. His daughter Judith had just married Thomas Quiney, a vintner, who had recently been hauled before a church court for getting another woman pregnant. That woman died in childbirth. Shakespeare carefully restructured Judith's inheritance to protect it from her husband's control. Then, 5 weeks later, he was dead. No extant contemporary source explains how or why he died. Half a century later, John Ward, the vicar of Stratford, wrote in his notebook, Shakespeare, Drayton, and Ben Jonson had a merry meeting, and, it seems, drank too hard, for Shakespeare died of a fever they contracted. 3 of the greatest writers of their age. 1 too many rounds. The most consequential hangover in literary history. It's probably not quite that simple. His signature on the will is shaky, suggesting he was already frail, and the will itself was revised just weeks before he died, which in 17th century tradition suggested awareness of a coming end. He may have been ill for months. The drinking party may have been coincidental, or may have finished off someone already declining. We don't know. His death, like his birth, like his 7 missing years, like his private feelings about anything, is simply absent from the record. His grave bears a curse, thought to be written by Shakespeare himself. Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones. The skull, when scientists scanned the grave in 2016, was missing. Someone moved it, centuries ago, curse and all. Even in death, he's a mystery. The world's greatest writer left almost no trace of himself, no letters expressing his opinions, no diary, no manuscripts. 1 will that bequests his wife a bed and his daughter a fortune with conditions attached. 2 children who outlived him but had no grandchildren. A curse on his grave that didn't work, and 39 plays, possibly 39 plays, that see further into the human condition than anything before or since. As his great contemporary Ben Jonson said, he was not of an age, but for all time. The biography is a mystery. The work is inexhaustible. Maybe that's exactly how he wanted it. Subscribe to the margin notes. We go into the dark room every week.